Behavior change is learning. Like if you didn't change your behavior, you didn't actually learn. That was a mistake, or like it prolongs you a year. Those are the things I actually like feel like were some of my best decisions. Like any business, when you start, you're just jumping in the ocean and you're like, I need to not sink. It's all on me now. More will always come if you do a good job. We all can have that every day. We can make choices of what we do next to move us toward happiness.
Real interviews, real guests, no actors. Real talk, get prepared for Free Factor.
This is Scott Devore. You're checking out the Free Factor podcast. I got a special guest in the house, Dr. Raj Loungani, Enhanced Psych. You know, we have I'm going to get right into it because we have a lot of shared interests with people who are kind of in the leadership, mindset, personal development space. PBD, Patrick, Bet, David, that's how we met. We're both on a mastermind call. But I just want to introduce you, say hello to the guest, and then I want to talk about kind of the affiliation with PBD and the mastermind and all that stuff.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Scott. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Good to see you.
Yeah, man, good to see you again. So this is actually our second run. Unfortunately, we sat down back in January, I think, a few months ago. This is May now, shooting. Man, this year's going by quick. You came in, we did the podcast. We were actually doing it in a different location, same building, but down in the podcast studio, a couple floors beneath us. And I had so much going on that weekend. I was supposed to do 2 podcasts that day. My best friend, who was supposed to come in, but he missed his flight. Typical of my best friend. He just like stuff like that happens to him all the time. I was supposed to do him and then you afterwards. And then the next day I had this really big event, first event I've ever did of its kind, a big Christian hip hop concert that I was putting on, bringing in a headliner from Atlanta, multiple acts. And that was like the next day. I had so much going on that weekend. And we used the same cameras. We used the same drives, I thought, to save the footage. And then when it came time to going into actually, editing our podcast, I was getting multiple updates. So, my media team's in here now. They're like telling me that we got it updated. I'm like, oh, okay. Or not the people in here in the room, but some others. And then come to find out, they said, no, we don't have it. I'm like, okay, because we were like scheduling for it to be released. So after multiple attempts trying to find the footage, it was just not to be found. I'm very grateful that you were open to coming back into the building and shooting again. So welcome back.
Thank you, man. Yeah, no problem. It happens. Another downfall of technology sometimes.
Yeah, man. But you know what? I get to spend more time with you, man. We had a great conversation the first time. We actually had a really good conversation afterwards too, man. So I really enjoyed getting some free psychiatric advice. You didn't send me a bill. Oh, you're going to send the bills in the mail. Maybe that got lost too. But I mentioned PBD initially. So that's how we pretty much got to know each other initially. We were just on some masterminding. I think PBD is probably one of the greatest entrepreneurs alive today. He might go down as one of the greatest in history. Obviously, time will tell. I think a lot of people have said that to him, but he's a real humble dude. And he said, let's let time tell that. But what was kind of your introduction into Patrick, Bet, David, and why'd you decided to, get involved in some of his masterminds and things like that?
Yeah. Love watching Patrick since the business content. First, I was just laughing when you brought him up even because I'm just imagining my wife. She says, is that the Karate Kid? Whenever I'm like listening to him in the kitchen. And I was like, okay, not even close, but okay. New York Karate connection, because I know he has a Yankee game. He was like inviting for it. So I was like, okay. So she's like, is that Karate Kid? But because we're watching Cobra Kai or whatever. But I started watching the business content to learn the business games. I'm a physician, started private practice in 2019. Wanted to build a better like concierge integrative psychiatry practice like that I would want for myself and my family. And so I, had to learn business. So I started listening to Patrick and among other people and other books and reading his books with your next 5 moves and trying to think of my next 15 moves and how to win in this game and trying to learn. We've been on the mastermind of learning from you and others who more vets and OGs in the game, and Tom too and his mastermind. Very smart biz doc. So just trying to learn from that wisdom. And then you got into politics, which is often very interesting too. So I enjoy the competition of it, which I think him and I think we vibe on that. I met him at Vault and we talked a little bit about, we both went to Fort Jackson for basic training.
Okay.
Because he had given a story from there.
Yeah.
And now it's like Military Appreciation Month, mental health Wear this month. So I was reminded of that yesterday and thinking about that and give him a couple like gifts because he usually gives people gifts.
Yeah.
Big gifts. I didn't give it like that, but
Right.
small ones for his family and him, so
Yeah.
he appreciated you said respect. So
Awesome. So you were seeking somebody who was a leader in business because you started your practice. I mean, you've been in medicine for a while. We'll kind of get into that origin story, but you were seeking, someone to like learn from, right? And so did you initially like gravitate towards him, or were there like other like people in the space, like other influencers or like business leaders that you were studying beforehand?
yeah, so I think he was really like one of the first because after from him I went to like get Blue Ocean Strategy,
Yeah.
to the Bible, and a lot of his book recommendations.
Yeah.
And then I went to Hormozy, which I met him and Alex Hormozy, at acquisition.com a few weeks ago at their scaling workshop in Vegas. And so that was definitely learned from him, a lot of his content. And then and at the workshop in Vault last year, you were there too, right?
Yep.
That was my first year, like going to meet Patrick and Tom and all these guys. And yeah, from there, man, just even like Scott, is it Parnell, like who does the YouTube secrets? Kind of learning from him.
Oh,
about
Sean
content.
Cannell.
Or Sean, I'm sorry,
Yeah, Sean
my
Cannell.
bad,
Yeah. Think
Sean,
Media.
like Think Media, yeah. So I started listening to a lot of him.
Yeah.
And I met him at Vault too. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, this is not only you had like Tom Brady, Mike Tyson, and Will Gador, who now works there too.
Yeah. Yep.
Which was a great book, and he loved it. PBD did. I loved that, and just more inspired about customer service and customer satisfaction from that. I'm sure you as well.
Yeah.
Inspiring his story.
No doubt. So here's a story about Sean Cannell. I was mad at myself. Like I went the first day at the Vault. I actually get up on the escalator with him, and he's like, Sean, he has millions of followers online, and he gets on the escalator. He's actually was by himself. He wasn't like with an entourage, and he's a step up on me. It's a really long escalader at that building.
On those long
you're on that
escalators
escalator
in
for like
the
5 minutes
convention
to go
center,
from the
yeah.
first floor to the fourth floor,
Yeah,
or
that was
whatever
a
it
nice
was.
hotel, yeah.
And I mean, he didn't make eye contact with me, but I was like, I should have said something to him. Like, but then within like 2 seconds, the people who were in front of him like noticed them. Then they start having a conversation with him. Like, oh man, like I didn't want to jump in the conversation or whatever. So I was actually a little mad at myself. Like, why didn't I? I should have said what's up to him.
Yeah.
Right. But the last day at the Vault,
Okay.
I did see him. Like when I went to go meet PBD.
There'll always be another opportunity.
Yeah, and then he was standing there, and I just, then I just like walked up to him. He was actually getting ready to, I guess, film like his own little recap or whatever, and we had a really good conversation. He probably won't remember. He probably doesn't know who I am, but I was like proud of myself because I'm like, all right, I stepped out because I was thinking about that for the few days I was there. I'm like, I should have said what's up to that dude.
Yeah.
But then I had the opportunity at the end, like I said.
Were you just not wanting to bother him or like?
Well, I was going to, but then I was like, I'll just wait. Maybe he'll like make eye contact and I'll say what's up. But then, people who were in front of us were more opportunistic than me, and they initiated the conversation where I probably should have. That's what I should have done.
Yeah. What happened with me? Actually, I had no idea who he was. I get in the bus. We're going to the dinner.
Yeah.
Which was like a nice buffet. At Hibachi.
Oh, you had a nice ticket last year.
Oh yeah, I did.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I think it was founder. Not CEO, but founder. This time I got CEO
Okay.
because I wanted to have the full
Yeah.
extra day
Absolutely.
of business stuff
Absolutely.
before. But yeah, Sean was on the bus, and then someone in front of him was like, you know who that is? And I was like, no. And he's like, yeah, he does this. He's got a lot of followers. I was like, cool. Like he's like,
Yeah.
hey, what, we just exchanged like, what have you learned so far? Like it was just
Yeah.
very casual conversation on the bus ride over.
Nice.
So that can be nice sometimes when you don't really know and you just kind of like there's no anxiety about it because you don't know
Right.
you're supposed to be
Right.
like this guy's on another level.
Yeah. All right. So you stepped up. You got CEO ticket.
This
for the
time I
Vault.
did, yeah.
Nice, man. Yeah, we actually got 2 CEO tickets,
Oh, there you go.
and I have 20 general mission tickets. We're running 22 deep. 22 deep from our company is going to be at the Vault. We're excited about it.
Okay, I got one other CO ticket. It's a lower or not CO. I'm sorry. Was it like what's the next thing under that?
Founder.
Yeah,
Yeah.
under that
Yeah. So CEO,
Manager.
founder, then executive.
executive. I got one
And general
executive
mission.
ticket because I was like, I don't know if I'll have my running mate by then because I was just starting up
Yeah.
a startup. But now I think I got him, so I was like, "Oh, I can give him that sea ticket." Because a couple people were like, "I want it," you know.
Nice,
This
nice.
is Labor Day weekend too, so
Yep.
enjoy West Palm, and that's where my whole family is. So
Okay. Awesome. Awesome, man. Yeah. So we're PBD, man. We're promoting you. You can go ahead and send me like an affiliate check. But man, no, I love PBD. I've been a big fan of his actually for not that long. You mentioned, some of the books that you read because he recommended, like his own book, Your Next 5 Moves, Blue Ocean Strategy.
I like that like hypomanic one.
Oh, I never read that
It's
one.
like like a hypomanic edge or something, and I see myself in these people's now because it's like those sleepless nights where you just keep going and
Yeah.
not very healthy actually. So do what I
Yeah.
say, not what I do there. But
So
entrepreneur thing.
yeah, PBD actually got on my radar. I mean, I knew the name, but he got on my radar from Ryan Pineda. So
Yeah,
a lot of people that Ryan Pineda had on his show,
yeah,
I began following.
right.
And PBD, when he was on there, I think it was July of last year or something like that, right? Like right before 4th of July. And I'm like, man, I can't believe I haven't been consuming this guy's content before because I just immediately loved it. And I just really like dug deep into all his valuetainment stuff, all his PVD podcast stuff. So, we're throwing a bunch of names out there: Hermosi, PBD, Pineda. I mean, that's what I love about you because we actually like and follow a lot of
Right.
the same people. So I think we have the same drive, a personal development, wanting to be better business owners, better people, just in general. So much respect. Was that always something? Obviously you got a lot of education scholastically, you're a doctor. Kind of where did that drive to be better come from?
Okay. That's probably I'm being Indian is a brown man obligation, became a doc. I was like, Wall Street, be a doctor, lawyer, kind of. Then my parents were doctors, so I kind of had exposure and like heard about it in the back of the car, when they have their conversations or dinner.
Yeah.
So you get kind of exposure, like you don't even realize it. And you go sometime with your mom to work or your dad, and so you kind of see it and you're comfortable with it. And then I didn't even know that was like different because that's just your life, right? But like when I went to go to med school, like people were like, I'm the first one that graduated college or something, and you're like, whoa, like that is kind of a thing, like, and also genetically, and also just your exposures, probably right, your skill sets genetically too. So I was like good at science and math and that stuff. But partly you have those Lamborghini posters on your wall ever, those kind of things. You're like, all right, if I really want to like get this kind of money, maybe I have to go like the Wall Street. That's like what we're used to seeing from Wall Street or like a Boiling Room and these movies. Like they were like those guys, like finance.
You can learn a lot from the movie Boiler Room,
Goldman
but you got to do it with
Sachs.
integrity.
Yeah, right. Not always the best lesson, but when you're a teenage boy, it seems like that's what it's all about. My dad's like, there's nothing like, you hold that patient's hand or their family member's hand and tell them, we got your family member, and it's like a privilege. And so I still remember that a lot of times, like even when you're like working hard, having a long day, it's like, this is a privilege.
Yeah.
And being in psychiatry, it's like, it's, or a surgeon, either way, it's like you're doing very kind of privileged things that you wouldn't normally get to do otherwise. So
yeah, absolutely. So your parents Indian? Did they were your first the family who made it to the U.S. or anyone before them?
Yep. So they got married in India and then moved to DC. And then I was born in DC, but they had just basically finished their medical training in medical school. So like my dad, my mom, they both were having to go to different places. So like I moved to Philadelphia, I moved to Houston, then I moved to Iowa. I grew up in Iowa mostly from like 5 years old.
Caitlin Clark fan?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, so University of Iowa. Yeah, she just kind of put them more on the map there recently.
She took the country by storm this year.
For sure. So yeah, we were all, me and my friends, all watching them, and it's kind of cool to see other people like know who the Hawkeyes were, thinking about them after that. And then went to my parents had moved to Florida when I was in college, so then I was in the Army. So I moved around a little bit there, like from 19 to 27, I was doing guard and reserves, but some of it was active duty. Okay. And that kind of actually led me more to psychiatry than anything, because I saw like a lot of my comrades come back with PTSD from Afghanistan or Iraq.
Absolutely.
Mostly that's where the deployments were doing OIF, OEF during the 2000s. And, so then
well, let's.
went
I
to
want.
medical school at
to
UF.
stick there. With the Army thing, because that
Mhm.
is there like that many Indian people of Indian descent like
Not a
going
lot.
into the military? How
Not a
did that even
lot.
happen?
I don't know. I think I've always been very like idealistic and like into loyalty to like country, service, love, like these principles. And I think that's also probably what draws us to PBD or Ryan and them. Like they're the same kind of faith,
Mm-hmm.
love, service, love your country. And that's I think the thing that binds it. And so after 9/11, yeah, so that happened. That just really shook me. And I was like, I wanted to do special forces. Like some other people have talked about, like I wanted to go go to Afghanistan and all that. And I was just so upset about it and all that. So I fortunately I had like a medical unit in my city, so I kind of got to have this great exposure too at 19. It was just freshman year of college, and
So this is after. So 9/11 happened. Like,
so
how old were you when 9/11 happened?
I was 18.
18.
Yeah,
so
just
the year
my
after.
first.
Patriotism is a high. What did your parents think about you making that decision?
My dad, so they both work with the VA.
Okay.
And now even my wife does. So like they call me like a VA baby in the VA system.
Yeah.
So I'd always been around vets like from World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea. Like I'd seen them because I'd come sometimes with my parents to the hospital.
Okay.
And like I was into GI Joes and all that. Like that sound like Jocko too much or something. Like, but it was like, oh, it's like let's go play GI Joe. Like it wasn't like that exactly, but it was like needed purpose beyond just being a student. And like I did other jobs. Like I always want to make my own way, and there was like a drive there, and that to earn it yourself. And I got like GI Bill to pay for college and some grad school after that, med school. I was gonna make it a whole career at Special Forces, but it was something about the seeing how things went in the 2000s and not a lot of people going 5-6 times getting PTSD.
Yeah.
And not just that. I was like, of course you think you're invincible when you're a young man. You're like, that's not gonna happen to me. But it was more like the control of the life. Like I saw how it broke up their families. Like I really valued, I want to be good in family. Like as a husband, a dad.
No doubt. Yeah. Will Reed, who you met, who he was a Marine. He was in Afghanistan, OEF. Had a couple of deployments there, and he does a lot of outreach outside of his his work here, just with people who deal with PTSD and things like that, through the church that he's a part of. I mean, like I never served in the military, but there was actually a period in my professional career when I worked for a company called Sierra Nevada Corporation, and we were a defense contractor, and we actually built, we outfitted airplanes that did reconnaissance missions in Afghanistan and Iraq. So even though I didn't serve, but this was like in 2000, I was there from like 2007 to 2013 or so like a 7-year period. And so I worked with a lot of military who served and things like that, who were currently serving, and like our customer was the military, like the Army and things like that. And we were modifying aircraft with putting radars and tactical equipment, communication, infrared cameras. So they were like passenger planes, so they wouldn't be thought of like as a military plane to be shot down,
Right.
by whatever. So just having the opportunity to work with people who were serving in the war, or just who just got out of it, who worked for the company. We got a lot of military who worked for us. But like I see the correlation now, with your parents, working at the VA, and then you just being around it, the patriotism after 9/11. You're 19 years old, and at the year afterwards. So you decided to go specifically into psychiatry. So how like, and I know you mentioned like those people who you're exposed to dealing with PTSD. Like, was there like one particular story, or was it just like a kind of a reoccurring thing that you saw? Like, was there something that kind of like, oh, this is the path that I want to go?
Yeah. So it was a few different things. I mean, it was kind of like a rolling snowball, becoming an avalanche there, like toward like that's definitely what I'm doing by even year 2 of medical school.
Okay.
So it was seeing like always loving psychology and like those kind of soft sciences, sociology, philosophy,
Hmm.
loving all that. Um, at but I was like, oh, okay, like there's somewhat stigma for the field, like especially from Indian people. Like my dad's a cardiologist, my mom's a neurologist, so it was like, which organ's more important? They'd have these people I was asking.
Right.
It was like, can't live with one, but really
Yeah.
can't really live till the other either. So
Right.
and so I thought I'd be a neurosurgeon, but I like shadowed that in college. It was like I couldn't do those 13, 14-hour surgeries. A little too much ADD. But that's just like a tough challenge for everybody.
Yeah.
Those are rock stars of me. They'll say, okay, you know, this isn't as invasive what you do because you're going into people's psyche. So I feel honored that they would say I can't do what you do, but it's like everyone's got their like God given
Absolutely.
gifts. And so one thing about me, I'm pretty like level, like pretty chill and laid back, and I think that really serves me well in the field. And I think from moving around a lot and just tough dad, like most Indian parents, or people that grew up our age that had Indian parents, second generation, like our dads are pretty strict because their dads were even stricter.
Mhm.
And it was like A minus. Why is that not A plus? And so like you got this like bit of like watching things carefully, and just when you move around, you're trying to make new friends. And in Iowa, like it's like 97% Caucasian, 2% African American, 1% other is like the demographics at the time, at least.
Yeah.
In Des Moines. And so you get kind of like, how do you get good at getting along with everybody, really? And I think these things serve really well in psychiatry. So I think there's like a skill set that was developed, and some that's wired, right? Like everything, it's nature and nurture.
Mhm.
And then really loving kids, like having a brother 8 years younger and kind of semi raising him. Like he says thanks for raising me sometimes to me. I was like, well, I just thought it was fun,
Yeah.
because it was like having a brother.
What's the
I'm
age
saying,
difference?
8 years.
Oh wow, yeah, that's
So you're
yeah.
doing diapers and you're doing babysitting. And
Yeah.
I was loving kids. So I was like, I'm going to do either pediatrics or child adolescent psychiatry as my end goal. But I also like adult psychiatry. It's like doing psychiatry allowed me to do both and everything.
Mhm.
Pediatrics is like, you're just focusing on kids then. It's and parents, but their patients are only the kids.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a lot of well child visits, like vaccines and looking the ears, and psychiatry was always just so fascinating to me. So I thought, is this a job? And then honestly, it doesn't feel like it often because it's so interesting.
Yeah.
And I love it so much. So
Yeah, I'm just thinking, man, you have like people trusting in you. Like there's so much responsibility to give them the right I don't even know, guidance, like direction or whatever. So you feel pressure?
yeah, for sure. I think you get so like deep into the art of it and the science. Like I love the puzzle of putting together the right medication regimen and the challenge of most of my patients. So because I'm kind of like doing cash pay, so it's going to be price out a lot of people, and that's what I'm trying to work on to kind of make it cheaper and to get it scaled. We'll talk about that more, but because I do feel bad, like sometimes, like okay, it might price out some people who can't get access to mental health care, so that leads to content and other ideas. But it's sometimes, it's actually interesting because like the people at the most wealthy, like that, and the poorest, it's all basically relatively the same kind of issues that we deal with psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
They're just have more resources, and it's interesting because the ultra like wealthy and the poorest have like different problems than the rest, though, because at the high end they're like, all right, do people really like me for me?
Mm-hmm.
And low end, it's like, can we pay the bills and survive? And in the middle, so most people are kind of have all the same otherwise sort of things they struggle with that are like just innately human. And traumas get thrown around a lot now, but like everyone's had tough situations and a set of cards that's different and challenges. And like I think one thing we probably again love going back to like Hormozy or like PBD is like they're like, it's your responsibility, personal responsibility. Like it's maybe not your fault, but it doesn't serve you well to externalize or be the victim, right? Like
right.
So getting people to change is obviously very challenging.
Yeah.
It's challenging for me. So that kind of led to the journey into the psychedelic assisted therapy that I'm doing now.
Yeah, I want to
make that
get in.
easier.
I want to get into that.
Sure.
But before I do, that's what I find so unique and I'm gonna say fascinating about you, because, like you said, you like PBD, personal responsibility, personal accountability, get yourself out of it. But you're a psychiatrist, where I'm thinking about me being, not really that educated in the field. Where most people like, environment is this, and like, no accountability. Is that, am I making a generalization that's not accurate?
I think we all have, it was funny because I was talking with a therapy patient earlier today about this same thing, about the balance of empathy and he was talking about like we either taking too much responsibility or too little responsibility on different things.
Yeah.
And like, say if you're got trauma, you're bullied or abused, God forbid, then a lot of these people have shame, and it's like they're unconsciously made it like it was their fault, or maybe even sometimes perpetrators make them feel that way.
Yeah,
of course too, but it's even unconsciously. I did something to bring that on, because we actually like don't want to be the victim. So it's like I did something wrong at some level, and then there's another part where it's like, you may not have the models of like taking the responsibility, since our parents, have full of flaws too sometimes. And then you want to protect yourself and your ego a little bit, right? Usually, like it's a lot of growth and maturity to get to a place where you're able to say like, it's my fault. Like I'll accept the responsibility. And then I think you've reached another level of responsibility and maturity, right?
Yeah. Man,
you get to that place.
Like you said, the balance between empathy. I was going to say buck stops here. The balance between empathy and personal responsibility. Like I think that's it. I mean, it's just like, obviously people have been through very traumatic things, and it's just, you're not the person, so you didn't experience it. You don't know how it affects them, right? Anyone could say, oh, pull your britches up and be strong and all that, but like until you lived it, you don't understand. Like, you're not that person. But then at the same time, sometimes you just have to, buck stops here and whatever. So is that something that they teach you, like when you're going through, like, getting, as you're graduating and then you're becoming, getting your doctorate, your PhD and all that? Like, how's that? I don't understand. Like, I don't know anything about it, but do they teach you these skills or?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, because I'm trying to like kind of retrace. I think you get a lot of good models and then maybe a couple anti-models, of the art of therapy and psychiatry. Within your peers, when you're kind of going through, you're doing not even role plays, but like seeing patients in front of others at times, the ones that volunteer. And so we do get kind of like simulations and train and watch video and film, like you would in sports or in sales, probably, like watching the film and seeing where things could be better and improving. But then I think there is like a thing that leads someone like me to gravitate to the field, that you like the idea of like, I want to be a better listener, I want to understand why people do what they do. And so like that passion, that curiosity, then as you get better at it, it grows. But I think there is certain like natural things that make it easier, but I think anyone could get better at it. There's like two types of people usually that go into psychiatry: the people who like to kind of talk, it's conversational, it's long sessions, versus like quick ER, more like let's respond to emergencies, quicker visits, or a surgeon, like less talk, it's like more doing. And then there's people who like just observe, right? Like people watching kind of thing. Yeah. Because it's like a lot of, that's even what our like physical exam is. It's a mental status exam, which is like appearance, behavior, going down the list. So people are usually like, oh, are you analyzing me? Like they find out what I do.
I was going to ask you, like, man, how much have you been analyzing me? Do you catch yourself doing
it's
that?
already been done. No, I think I think you do it to where it can be helpful, like in the sense of, okay, like let me really try to understand my friend or my wife or my kids, like you try to use it where it could be helpful. And even then, like, then that's when you learn how hard these things really are for other people and have more empathy to them, like other parents or
Hmm.
people struggling with things in their family, because you're like, when it's my family, it's much easier said than done kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's hard, and that's,
Yeah. What's going through my brain
the
now?
blind spots we have.
I was just thinking about PVD, and maybe I was doing a little bit to you. Like you were like, oh, when's your birthday? Like I think he's really big in like zodiac
Yeah,
signs,
yeah.
just understanding
Yeah.
personality.
I'm a Libra.
And
Yeah,
then
typical Libra.
and then like ask him about the family. Oh, okay. Oh, 9/11. You're 18. That's why you went in the military. So he's like calculating these things because then he's like thinking
Smart.
about like when he's having a conversation with someone, like what is their need or what is the issue and things like that.
Yeah, and he likes psychology. Like you could tell, and he gets into that. And that also I appreciate. I like for Vault last year. I was bringing them like a pre-mortem of why each candidate would lose or win. You know, how you do like
Yeah.
in business
hmm
pre-mortems, like to kind of prepare for and do like SWOT analysis and stuff. So I had done that for each candidate. I was like, oh, that would be an interesting topic to talk about with them if I get a chance to. But there really was that chance. But that's like how I came into the Vault, thinking like he would vibe with the topic like that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he definitely would. Definitely would. So let's transition into entrepreneurship. You obviously before you started your practice in enhanced psych, you were working for other practitioners, under them.
Mhm.
Did you always knew you were going to branch out on your own? Like how did that work? Like tell me kind of
Yeah, sure.
after you got licensed and you started you're in a clinic or whatever, you did it for how long, and then when you actually decided to branch out.
Hmm.
Tell me that.
Yeah,
Tell me that
so I
experience.
actually did an extra year of adult psychiatry residency, which are 4 years. I usually okay, so the adult psychiatry residency, like to get your board certification and be a psychiatrist, is 4 years. But if you go to child adolescent psychiatry, you could leave after 3 and do 2 more. And instead, I did all 4 and then 2 more on child psychiatry. So I did an extra year in a way, knowing I was going to do child because I wanted that 4th year to really just hone the craft of outpatient, just have a lot of patients for 2 years and see. Because I always knew I'd be like outpatient psychiatrist once I, you know, got into psychiatry. I like that way more than inpatient, even though I still done inpatient jobs too while having my practice.
Yeah.
But it's outpatient is what I really love, is that long continuity, and just treatment really happens more in outpatient where you have time to see changes and do therapy. And so those are the things I love. So the thing is, when you work with, so I was like at Baptist first, right here downtown.
Yeah.
The thing in the child center, but the thing is, when you're in private practice, cash pay like I'm now, versus in the clinic or a hospital setting like this, it's different between entrepreneur and entrepreneur, right? And so there was like changes that I want to institute. It would take time, and some of us, I think there's maybe two types of people. Like some of us, like we want to be our own boss and like have a bigger mission and vision, and it's more work, and you got to grind sometimes more in certain ways, or hustle. But it's like you're kind of like getting to make the career you want, your dream work, and also do things differently and better than what it already is, the status quo.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what led me to, I'm gonna start my own practice. And like it's obviously been way more work, but it doesn't always feel like that, because it's like you're calling the shots. And in the end of the day, it's if I'm too busy and overscheduled, it's because I allowed that to happen or made that happen.
Yeah. So it's different from the path of your parents because they
Right.
worked at the VA.
Right.
They didn't start their own, practice on their own.
Mm-hmm.
Was that something your dad encouraged? Your parents encouraged you to do, or they just kind of
I'm
didn't really say
pretty,
anything, and they, whatever you said you were gonna
yeah,
do, they were good.
I'm
with?
pretty hard headed. Like my mom, like didn't want me to be in the military because she'd worry so much, like
Mhm.
something's gonna happen, because she knew it was happening to a lot of people during that time. And I'm like, and it is harder for the families because they don't have the control. You're there, actually there, and you chose it. But like the things I'm the most like okay with in my past, even where my mom would be like, that was a mistake, or like it prolongs you a year, or those are the things I actually like feel like were some of my best decisions. And the ones where you kind of like, when you didn't follow your gut and you kind of did something for someone else or please them,
Yeah.
which can be a big part of our culture. And like that kind of happened with me on some big decisions sometimes, where I would get like pressured, and then I'd be like, but I didn't really choose that. Like, and then what kind of person am I that I didn't make that choice? Like, you know what I mean? Then you kind of could be yourself. You got to take responsibility and be like, I still chose it. But yeah, I mean, I just really like the doing my own practice in the sense of because I could change how things are done and make it better. Where the mental health care is not always the best like, in the system the way it is now, the status quo.
Yeah. So that was 2019, right?
Yeah. And my parents, like, I mean, they were basically like, oh, no one in our family's done private practice, but like I had to get to work and learn it from like talking to other people I know who did do it. Had fortunately some couple other older friends gave me some good advice.
Yeah.
And then just talking to other OGs in town, some were really great. Like Dr. Galliano, shout out to you, and just some of the other docs around that and therapists. They just give me advice on how to, like you get nervous when you start, like any business when you start, that you're just jumping in the ocean, and you're like, I need to not sink because it's all on me now. And when you're just starting, you have zero patience. So, but one Dr. Barsky, he really, shout out to him. He was like, look, you are a child psychiatrist, the most shortest field in medicine. And you're in Ponte Vedra Beach at the time. Now I'm in Jack's Beach and Ponte Vedra Beach. But he's like, that's like having a lifesaver or a boat or to start with. So you're in better position than me or the therapist because you're going to be in high demand. You're going to be good. And another Mike Zoel also in Ponte Vedra had lived there 20 years and he was golfing a lot. He's a therapist. He was like, yeah, you'll do great out here. So like certain people gave me that confidence to like start. Yeah. And then it's just like a faith, like I'm thinking about 50 Cent for some reason, like get rich or die trying kind of thing. But I was just like, that was
that's
came
not
to me.
like you, man. You got the 90s hip hop references. Yeah.
He was 2000s, yeah. But.
Yeah. Well, he started, he was mixtapes were coming out.
Oh,
in the late
okay.
90s,
Oh, you go way back. Oh, yeah, because you got the DC.
Yeah, I grew up in
Northeast
Western Maryland,
yeah.
and I lived in the DC area of Fairfax for a little bit. Bought my first house. That's where I lived when I got married. But I used to DJ back in middle school.
Wow.
I was doing karaoke DJing and family stuff like in middle school. High school, I started to do house parties. College, I started to really branch out and do events and things like that. So I'm definitely a hip hop.
So when
guy.
you hear like a reference like that or a song, like you think about like when you DJ'd it or something sometimes. Yeah. Like how I'm going, like I was in Hawaii and AIT, training as a med lab tech when they were just playing 50 Cent over and over and over. Like you go right back to where you were.
Anything would trigger back a memory of take me back to that time frame. Absolutely. So you started Enhanced Psych, right? And you have you have an office out at the beaches. We're in Jacksonville, so out at the beaches, and you're 5 years in practice?
Yeah, 5 years.
I want to dig into kind of the medical therapy side and then the entrepreneur side. So let's kind of take it to the actual medical side. So we talked about this the first time, and man, you blew my mind because I'm like, oh man, I'm listening, I'm hearing, but I'm just not like schooled, educated on a lot of the stuff.
Sure.
So you kind of talk about kind of the different therapies and like what you specialize in and kind of break it down a little bit for like someone like me, the layman, to understand.
So I do more concierge work, and so we're basically going to deliver med management at the highest level and different therapies, integrative psychotherapy. So there's different types of therapy, and a lot of therapists, they're master's level or PhD, PsyD level, like doctorate, but not medical doctors. They would maybe specialize in like one of them and be like the master of that one. Cognitive behavioral therapy, they might have done a thesis in it for years or research, or just done years of like that therapy alone, right? Written books on and stuff. So I've done training in all of like Psychoanalytic Institute and NYU. So I do a lot of psychodynamic therapy, psychoanalytic, which goes well into the psychedelic assisted therapy you're doing now, which is psychodynamic, meaning like we're peeling back the layers. Like that takes more on time. Like you imagine like Freud with the person laying on the couch, like that's psychodynamic similarity. Like it has lasting results even when it's done, on like relationships, and you're lowering the defenses, but you need time to lower them because you have to build up the person first, the real like ego function, we call it. like all the strengths. Otherwise, you could have bad therapy and like cause lower a wall, and now you're letting in the pain. Like defenses are against pain, but they also, what served you before may not serve you now, and that's kind of the thing. And so that's psychodynamic. Then cognitive behavioral is like the one that's more evidence based to be as like medicine. So usually I'll start with that because we're gonna look at like the here and now. We don't have to look back and take months and years. It's just like, what's your thoughts you're having? Like, and this works for everybody. This is for all people, not just if you have anxiety disorder, depression disorder. But every day, every new patient, we start there. Like, what's the thought you're having when you're anxious or down? What's in your control? What's the evidence for and against that thought? Put that thought on the stand. And then what would you tell your best friend about the thought? Because we're often our own worst enemies, right? And now we can reframe the thought, and that'll improve the mood or the anxiety. And if you do that enough, you will change like the core belief, like the root of the anxiety, which is usually like not feeling enough, or the world is judgmental, unfair, unpredictable. That's the control part of anxiety.
So it changes the root, but you don't have to always peel back the onion, like you said, so much. Right.
Right. It's more into logic.
Yeah.
But like there's more overlap between these sort of therapies than there is apart. And then there's other types. But if you start with at least what's the thoughts you're having when you're anxious and get like a record of those, now we can change. That's the homework I might give. Like then you can really change that pretty quick. 6 to 8 weeks. Not as fast as medicine. So if it's severe, we're usually depression, anxiety, or whatever, then we're going to usually have a combination of medicine plus therapy. And like, what's your behaviors? Like, let's have exposures to things you're anxious about. Like, say hi to that person you're nervous to say hi to, maybe, or, leave your room when you don't want to, when you're down. Like, go to work, go to school, go exercise. Like, that itself will help your mood because you'll change your thought to feel, I'm not worthless or hopeless. I'm worthwhile. Like, I'm worth taking care of, Yeah. And I'm the kind of guy that does things when it's tough. And, so that's, I'm thinking a lot about Hormozy again, because he talked about his depression, and he just worked for a few days and he's like, I'm not depressed anymore. And like, sometimes it was just the behavioral activation you needed.
Yeah. You got the ketamine. Talk about that.
Yeah. So psychedelics, they've been getting a little more, they were used like by a few people 50 years back, and they were like, then got kind of abused. People weren't showing up to work, used too much, right, in the 60s. But there was like knowledge that, in certain universities, certain docs, they were trying them with couples and individuals and seeing that they were getting better therapy. So this was known like a while ago, and we've kind of, in a way, shot ourselves in the foot. I mean, it's politics and everything get involved.
Yeah. That's a story of most medicine, or most things. Like, things could have advanced so much, but politics played a part and stunted. Like, think of like how much further we've advanced. And like Nikola Tesla hit the stuff he was doing hundreds of years ago, whenever his time was, if we would have like implemented it, when it comes to energy and things like that, didn't mean to jump on it.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure there's like a lot of examples of that for sure. Just in terms of like what other things have been halted because of regulation.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in our state, it's like free in business in a lot of ways, but it's like more conservative than the West Coast as far as like drugs. So like right now, like Oregon, psilocybin assisted therapy is already legal and being done for if you're an Oregon resident, and like MDMA assisted therapy, and people getting them more on the west side, even though of the country, like between California, Oregon, and Colorado, especially Texas, like it comes over, trickles here later. But one thing that has been around like a dozen years is ketamine. And so usually there's certain companies that are sending it like as what we call a troche, like a lozenge that absorbs when you put it in your mouth, and you'll put it here and it'll absorb, and it'll give a certain effect and allow for like therapy and depression to get better. But also anxiety to get better, even though it's designed more for depression. So me with my interest in therapy, I was like really looking at certain of my patients that were stable enough with medicine plus like traditional therapy, not psychedelic, but they were still making kind of decisions that they weren't learning the lessons, and they were going back to kind of things that which were like the trauma that they had, like whether it was the abuse, whatever the abuser was, like they were kind of going back to that situation again, not feeling worthy of better. Some of that shame was so that PTSD was not totally healed, and so I kind of it really like it's like we need to be getting people better, and this is like how the system is, and even inpatient working in child adolescent unit for a year there through this past summer, I was like, okay, it's the same people over and over. Like they're not getting better, and a lot of the system is like, that's fine. Like this is a different sort of business. It's not like you just want recurring cleaning every month. Like you
Right.
really do want to get people better
Right.
if you, I think, have the right ethics and morals and
Yeah.
heart to it. And so, especially when you like start working with someone 4 or 5 years, you're like they keep going back to the same kind of
Mhm.
trauma, and it's called a repetition compulsion. Like it's almost in theory, it's like we're maybe trying to rewrite the story. Like we would keep going back to the same. That's when people say like mommy issues or daddy issues. Like
Mhm.
kind of going back to the same kind of people or situations again. And if like I fix this one, I fix that person or this situation goes better, then it'll like heal the original childhood maybe trauma. And
Yeah.
it's like they have to learn that's not a good idea. It's unlikely to work, and it won't actually fix the past trauma. You really have to like have empathy for that younger one person you were, that younger inner child, and also like forgive them and forgive the other maybe person sometimes too. And so, anyways, this kind of work though, it's very hard because part of PTSD is avoidance. Part of trauma. It's so hard to talk about and open up about and make change. So, what I learned was psychedelics, like they scramble these pathways in the brain. And there's a good Netflix documentary, How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan, and he wrote a book which I had for a little while now, first, but then he put that Netflix show out there, which showed like a few different psychedelic assisted therapies, and so that's it. Also, kind of paint a good picture and talk about some of these things in an entertaining way. But basically, you could kind of put new paths down your brain, so it allows change, which allows kind of going to Hormozy line, like behavior change is learning. Like if you didn't change your behavior, you didn't actually learn or change. But even thought patterns are like behaviors. Like it's hard to change them. Like how you think about yourself, or you'd have to keep reminding yourself, which is difficult.
Yeah.
Especially when you're stressed, you'll go back to the old mindset. So this allowed change, and also they do ego dissolution. Psychedelics do, and so even with ketamine, you're gonna get like this ego dissolution where you have more empathy to yourself and others, and you're gonna recognize like love and connection are the most important things, and then you'll get a north star of clarity too, because it kind of like if you did like a 7-day Vipassana retreat, people can sometimes get that where you're just alone, no screens, no truck, just meditating for 7 days. You can get like, who am I? Like, what do I want? Away from all this noise that we usually have all these inputs, right? Especially with all the technology. And so with the psychedelic though, like you're just in that space in like 5 minutes. And so most people have trouble even meditating like 5-10 minutes a day. And also this is obviously so again, it's like the cognitive behavioral therapy and psychodynamic therapy. There's a lot of overlap between, like if you just did a long meditation retreat like that and got away from everything, you can hit some of these transcendent states and breathing, holotropic breathing. But each psychedelic is different, but ketamine, it has a dissociation piece of it, and that will like allow you to almost view whatever's like really in your soul. And that we also call that, like in Eastern religion stuff, they might say that's God or love. Like inside everyone is like who they really are, like inside, and that's kind of what can come out like into the vision, and then people can do art with it afterward, and that's like whole brain integration. And then the lessons that the North Star of like, okay, like I need to find a partner if they're just feeling this emptiness, or like I need to go back to college. Like these are some of the stories from recently I'm thinking of, or healing some past trauma that they had even repressed and didn't even remember. Like these things can happen very efficiently and quickly, and like people can actually feel much lighter and almost healed from the trauma and thrive in like in ways they didn't before. So the medicine itself has this biological neuroplasticity and works really well, but it like this therapy, like turning down with the method that we use, there's a particular unique Canadian method kind of been developing, and I'll put out a course soon about it because it's new. that I haven't seen anyone else has done this yet. It's kind of like the best combination of things to put with it to get the best results. So to me, it's like the best results, fastest, efficient business principles, right? Cheaper, quicker, more efficient, and better and safer. Like these things, especially in medicine, you got to put the safer part. A lot of other kind of ways of doing it, like IV, when they give in a clinic and then they do therapy on their own alone, like that puts a risk, or it's not as good for the therapy because it's too much. Like when we do it, I usually do an oral or intramuscular, and it's a shot, so it's like just the right amount, and I know exactly, like predictably, this dose I'm going to get this response, and like in a couple weeks we can heal a lot of the trauma, and like people are now like, I get it about love and connection, like this is what it's all about, relationships, like they get this clarity, and then they're willing to make the change and able to make the change.
You brought up like business principles, and I learned this in business a long time ago, 20 years ago. It was this principle, and it was a chiropractor. So someone was saying, like, a chiropractor. So follow me all the way through on this thought, and I got a question. So a chiropractor, obviously, he wants to make his patients better. He runs a business, obviously, so he wants to make money. So chiropractors, basically, they'll go do the adjustment with a person, but then they're always scheduling the next adjustment, whether they're better or not, right? So then, obviously, in your field of work, you want to help the patient. You want to help them, like they're dealing with some issues, but you're also running a business, and you need to make revenue. So if everyone gets healed, you're going to have to go into another industry. You have to like find some other. So how do you balance that? Helping the patient, but obviously running a business, wanting the revenue, you got family and things like that.
And I don't think like most people go into the healthcare professions like consciously wanting, not wanting to do their best for the patient, but I think it's just the incentive structure being set up as is that, like, and this is another thing Homarzi brought up at acquisition a few weeks ago, was like, I don't even want to get into weight loss now. Like I wouldn't get into it again because he was in the gym business first, but I don't consider that a good choice, because if you fail, they'll leave, or if you succeed, they'll leave. So I was like, is my business kind of like that? Like if I had to look at it in a business perspective at that time, and so like, he's like, I would rather actually go into the cleaning or pest control, or like, I will just pick the easier opportunity that like recurring is fine. And is more likely, I guess. But my thing is like, there's a mental health crisis. There's too many people need help. And that was what's bothered me, that I feel like there's a lot of care that's not to standard and par. And like, that's a lot based on the systems. So the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is like, ooh, like you feel free. Like you can work way more because you're like, I feel like I know my heart and my mind and my ethics and my morals are like all aligned in the vision of like, how do I get all these people who don't have access to care the care by being good at business to scale? And this is where like, that's such a gift to be able to learn. And this is another Hormozi thing I keep referring, because maybe it's just I was at the conference there, but he's like, more is better, or better is more, rather, he says, and there's also like more, do better, do more, do better, and then you like, and it's the principle, do no harm. Do you not think the person, even if you got them better, they often leave, but then something happens again, or they preferred you because they trust you, because they know you were actually really trying to get them better. And that's, I was telling someone else that, and if you look up Enhanced Psych or practice, now starting Enhanced Psych Network, a spinoff, bigger company that's going to grow and scale. But they're like, that's clear from your reviews. Like they're saying you really care. And part of it's like the model of just having more time. And part of it's like the whole Will Gador, like treat people like you want to be treated. Just golden rule, like how you'd want your family and you, like, and reminding yourself, even when it's busy, right? Like you kind of have to, this is an honor, this is a privilege. And I think you'll have longevity, and it's an infinite game there. And you're just like, did I do my best? Like more will always come if you do a good job, I feel like, and safer.
Absolutely.
And it's people's lives. It's not just a business.
It's the right seeds to sow, is do the best, heal the patient, because so much more will come from that. What's you mentioned the mental health crisis.
Yeah.
right? You've been, you were obviously getting your education before you became a doctor. Now you had a practice. How much has changed in the mental health crisis? Kind of when you decided, hey, this is the path, professional career I want to go into. Like now, like, is it gotten exponentially worse? I mean, how
Mhm.
would you gauge kind of where we're at right now?
Yeah. It has gotten worse from where we started, especially in kiddos. Like I was already the most shortaged field in medicine, like not the demand couldn't be met by the supply. And that's only grown, especially after COVID. But there's like, societal things, phones, social media for sure are part of it. Just becomes because less actual real connection. And it's like another thing that's addictive too. I think we all, at least I could relate to some of that. Like it's hard to walk away from it and put it down sometimes. So that affects sleep. And but there's obviously some political, social, cultural issues I think at play too with um, you know, whether it's victimhood or identity, people struggling with identity. That's part of the trans. More people coming out as trans, so I think it's like complicated, right? But there's more kids, especially with mental health conditions now. More, especially in girls, the suicide rates have gone up, and boys, the uh eating disorders rates have gone up. So they're kind of like crossed
Mm.
to like girls being more like boys and boys are more like
Oh,
girls there too.
interesting.
And I think you got to look at like Instagram culture. And when they had a study, I'm sure like that did show that it increased that in teens, mental health issues. But like COVID for sure also increased it. The staying home and not getting out again. That's like what happens in depression. So you're not getting the behavioral activation to get out, and so losing that connection again, which is what we talked about. Is like it's all about. So that caused a lot of depression and just unpredictable. So that creates more anxiety. The world is unsafe, unpredictable.
Yeah. So I got two teenage girls, and less than a month they'll both be in high school, or the ones finishing middle school. Next year they'll both be in high school. What are some key things for particularly teenage girls in high school to,
Mm.
I would say protect themselves, whatever the word is, to prepare themselves better
Yeah.
to, for the world and
Wow. Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I'm thinking about you. My daughter's about to turn 5 in a couple weeks, and so I'll be trying to go back to this conversation because like when it's your kids, it's like seems like a whole different question compared to when you're just giving advice to a parent, that's it's not your family. But so I was thinking ahead of that now. I can't imagine. But okay, so middle school and high school. Wow. So all right, God bless you for that. I'm sure that's tough already. It's got its
super tough.
moments. Okay, so I would say phones. I think you would have to consider screen time and phones. We do. Sometimes I feel bad about it, given what I do. But like we do have our kids. Sometimes they are on the screens and having that recreational time. But like I think limiting it, because if it's too much time on there, you're comparing FOMO. Some level of that's just like human.
Yeah.
Or at least Instagram again. Now I'm not bashing on Instagram or anything, but it is kind of like have people presenting this best life that makes people feel like their life's not good enough when it's not even necessarily their real life. They're just kind of flexing and for someone else's Lambo or with filters, right?
Yeah.
So I think kind of keeping an eye on that. It's supervising, which I think that's the thing you got to negotiate with your wife. And
Yeah,
how to
what are
handle
some
that.
tactics though? Because honestly, like, my kids, they grew up with iPads, they're 16 and 14. And
Yeah.
they need, I wouldn't say they need phones, but it's hard for them to not operate
Right.
without phones because there's a lot of things they do at school, they need phones. So then to tell my 16-year-old who will be an adult in less than 2 years, hey, we're eliminating that screen time, babe. She's gonna be a junior next year. Like, what are some tactics for parents? Like even just like a heart-to-heart way to have a conversation. Like, hey, because they're aware. Like my kids, fortunately, they're smart. They know that too much is probably not good. But is there any like tactics or ways to kind of have that conversation of like, hey, maybe limiting it more would make more sense. Like, what would you
Yeah, I
tell
mean, I
a
think
parent?
getting each individual is somewhat different, right? Or you have to individualize it to them somewhat. But I think overall, like keeping it less a couple hours of like personal screen time a day on the weekdays, and video games. Like some people will allow an hour. It's like, are you getting the rest of your stuff done with like sports or music or theater, and just having a full life of extracurricular and getting your academics, and then I think it depends on the child, like how much do they use right now, you think, of
A
like
lot.
okay. I think it's hard, like you said. I can't imagine I'm definitely going to be there
Yeah,
more
like
in a
now,
few years.
you see like Florida just passed a bill that said you have to be no one under 14 can be on social media. Right?
Oh
Like
wow.
that was the thing. I heard it on PBD's podcast.
Yeah.
But that wasn't a thing until now, where like we're like a generation where we didn't really. This is all new to parents.
Yeah.
And obviously, the relationship you have with your kids, being involved in their lives, having those conversations is obviously important. But and I used to be like I used to always pride myself because I always thought I was a really good dad compared to others. I did all this stuff with my kids. Like I bathed them, I did everything. I read with them every night, prayed with them every night, up until they got to a certain point. Like after they got into middle school,
Yeah.
I don't, we don't sit there and read Bible together anymore. High school kids. But because now they're older, now
Yeah.
they're doing things with their friends, so our conversations aren't as frequent as they used to be. I mean, I drive my kids to school every day, so we have that conversation. We have that time in the morning.
Okay,
Things
so
like
that's good.
that.
So they haven't been like, I don't want anything to do with you or anything.
No,
Yeah.
no, they're not. They're not. I mean, they'll have their moments and
Yeah,
things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, but they haven't
That's good.
fully shunned me
That's good. That's good.
yet. Hopefully that doesn't happen. But
They won't. It's
uh,
no way.
so I mean, I forget what my question was. I don't know. I think I'm just
Oh,
gonna.
how do you like kind of like wrangle like with the screen time?
Well, just the conversation to make them aware, like, hey, just to consider these things. So obviously, kids don't, especially teenagers, they don't want to be told what to do.
Right.
But if you're like, hey,
Mm.
here's like, not that you're throwing data at them,
Yeah.
or anything
Ah,
like
okay,
that,
okay.
but like an easier way to break down where the boundaries won't be immediately put
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
To have like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
heart-to-heart conversation about, hey, this is what's happening in the
Mhm.
world with mental health. A lot of it is due to social media, being on the screens.
Good question.
Like to, this is something I hope that we can clip and share it with like parents. Like, oh yeah, man,
Yeah.
that was some good information.
Yeah,
that I
yeah, yeah.
learned of a tactic to
It's a
have,
great
with my kids.
question. Yeah. I think if they're involved in extracurriculars, I think it's so key. Because I mean, I'm sure you did. We did
Yeah.
sports, we did music, we did different things, and they hang with friends, and like we want to preserve those things that we know works, which is give them a rounded life where they're like actually outside and getting sunlight, and having person-to-person connection, getting dinner with people, or going to the movies, even like, but not just I was staying at home and not getting behavioral activation, not getting sunlight, in their screens, which is like creates anxiety and depression more if you're in there too much. So I think just like it's hard to say don't do something, but it's easier, I think, to push like this is so great. And there are a lot of kids like that in adolescence, and they're kind of just parents modeled it to them, and now we're on their screens themselves all the time. That also helps.
Yeah,
because they're gonna look more what you do, right? Not what you say. I'm
right.
sure you
Absolutely.
noticed.
That is the biggest thing. Like they're gonna, what you do speaks so loud, I can't hear what you say.
Right.
And I think about that too, because like,
Yep.
you're the first person that they look at. So if I was like smoking cigarettes, if I was, drinking every night, if I was using bad language, and then I'm telling them, oh, don't smoke,
Right.
don't get drunk, don't use bad words. But then I'm like, they're like, they're
Yeah.
gonna model what I do, not more so what I say.
Absolutely.
So that's good advice. I'm gonna have my kids watch this. Like, hey, you gotta see what Dr. Raj said about the screen time. He said,
Oh,
no more
gosh.
phones.
I'll refer that American Pediatric Association. Throw them under the bus.
So Raj, man, I really appreciate you being here. What's next? You mentioned
Yeah.
the next level and
Mhm.
enhanced site network. Maybe talk about that, kind of like your
Yeah.
vision here going into the future. What your plans are for
Yeah,
your business and,
absolutely. So yeah, I wanted to get this like highest level like concierge integrative psychiatry where we do therapy, med management, but also like look at lifestyle, look at functional medicine things like doing certain labs, like for Lyme disease, and just supplements, cover the whole gamut of like, and maybe in spiritual, side, things like that, therapy, whatever we can do to help within psychology, psychiatry. And I wanted to connect the silos because medicine is very siloed. So make it kind of like how it would be at a hospital home where you have like therapy and psychiatry like connected, but at the highest level where it's concierge, it's going to be like quick. There could be like 24/7 call and build a network, and then even get in the most cutting edge, best sort of therapies, like the psychedelic assisted therapies. Right now we got the ketamine assisted therapy, and that's going to be easily transportable, the method, which stay tuned. I'm going to drop that shortly in the summer. So I don't want to give it all away now, but MDMA assisted therapy, that's going to be huge. It should be FDA approved in the next 6 to 12 months, and maybe even psilocybin mushroom assisted therapy. So this $500 million industry, psychedelic medicine, is supposed to go to $5 billion in the next few years. So it is a blue ocean in that sense on the business side, which is always nice when that's also the best psychiatry 5.0 care, which is the highest level. But I'm on the cutting edge of it and the forefront, so that's where I'm building the thought leadership and content. Also can help, get the best sort of ideal therapists to work with us and other prescribers, and who really will also have that passion, that vision to provide the best care. And if we can build a network large enough, we can get it maybe cheaper for everybody. Yeah. And to get the highest level care right now, it's not lower level care in general. And a lot of people still are shut out of it. Yeah. So this is value-based care, really.
Awesome. Man, I really appreciate you coming on. What's like your handles? How can people find you online? The website? Go ahead and share all that for the audience.
Yeah, so I'm Dr. drenhancepsych on most platforms, or you can look at me up, Raj Loungani on Facebook, Enhanced Psych Network, and I got a new Happiness of Pursuit podcast, which is on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
My YouTube page. So that's
a great name.
Thank you. Yeah, because that's like the sweet spot of like where we're aiming. It's just like slow, gradual. Obviously, if you get a 10x growth, take it, but you still want to have continual like climbing, and we all can have that every day. We can make choices of what we do next to move us toward happiness. Yeah, and that's the sweet spot of happiness, is just pursuing a goal. Like that is dopamine, natural dopamine, constant. So you don't never have to have short hits of it. If you have good goals, good mission, purpose, it won't feel like a job, and you'll never get tired of it.
Awesome. I love it. Or there you have it. Dr. Raj Loungani. This is the Free Factor podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, share it, bell button, all that good stuff. This is scottfreedevore checking out my main man, Dr. Raj. Check out the next episode. Drop in every single week, and we'll talk to you later.
Real interviews, real guests, no actors. Real talk, get prepared for Free Factor.